Welcome back. As you know, I'm Zach Jones, and today, once again, I'm going to read you a chapter from Doctor Who, Engines of War, set during the last Great Time War, the biggest war in the universe, but according to the Santarans, the finest war in history. It wasn't the finest war in history, it was hell. The war between the Time Lords and the Daleks, and I'm going to read Chapter 4 from Part 1, Moldox, and this is where we get to see the Daleks in the Tantalus Spiral, and we meet a group of Daleks created by the Emperor called the Eternity Circle to oversee the preparations and basically oversee everything that's going on in the Tantalus Spiral. And, right, are you all sitting comfortably? Good. Have you got something to eat and drink? That's good. But if you haven't, then pause this and go get something to eat and drink. And it's about to begin. Doctor Who, Engines of War, Chapter 4. Before the Daleks had come, Jocelyn Harris had been the governor of the planet Moldox, along with the 4 outlying human settlements on the planet's moons. She had been good at her job too. The colony had flourished under her dutiful eye. Birth rates were up, the construction program continued at a steady pace, and the terraforming progress had proved relatively smooth, with only one memorable malfunction causing a single, harsh winter. Jocelyn had taken pride in her work. The people of Moldox, who had re-elected her 3 times in succession, had celebrated her as the herald of a new age. And, to repay them for their unwavering faith, she had betrayed them all to the Daleks. She hadn't done it out of a desire for power, or because of any sort of devotion to a higher cause. They were the sort of things that drove most defectors in her limited experience. No. What she'd done had been motivated by cowardice, and in Jocelyn's own opinion, that made her the very worst sort of defector. She had done it to save her own skin. When the Daleks had swarmed over Moldox, stripping the planet bare and culling the population, she had agreed to become their human mouthpiece, their puppet, their plaything, all to make sure that she lived. Over the years, she'd tried to tell herself that she'd had no choice, that surely it was better if she worked against the Daleks from the inside, engaging herself into their plans, warning her people on the ground. Only she'd always been just that little bit too afraid to act, to pass any of the information onto the Resistance, worried that the Daleks would find out what she was up to. Their retribution would be swift and effective, and that would be the end of it all. She knew that. Whatever happened, one thing was for certain. She was immensely replaceable. She wondered what the Daleks had in mind for her today. 2 of the dreadful brass-coloured tin cans had come to her room, a cell by any other name, and demanded she leave with them immediately. As usual, there was no attempt at niceties, no explanation, just the simple command that she was required in the audience chamber. She rose from behind her desk, setting down her data tablet, and did as she was told. The artificial gravity on the Dalek command station was weak, despite its size. The Daleks, as she learned, had no real need of it. They could magnetize themselves to the metal floors to avoid floating away. Even if they did, they had propulsors that would enable them to fly. The gravity, then, was a simple concession to the prisoners that they held on board the station, and as such, they weren't particularly given to expending power to ensure that it was set as a comfortable level. As such, Jocelyn found herself bouncing along behind the Daleks, taking exaggerated strides as she tried to keep up. The audience chamber was less than 500 metres from her cell, and during the many years she'd been held on the station, she'd visited it innumerable times. Today, it seemed, the Eternity Circle was in full session. All 5 of them were there, resting upon their raised pedestals, glaring down at her as she loped into the large hexagonal chamber. She'd never quite been able to establish the function of these particular Daleks, or what set them apart from their more lowly kin, save for their colouring, of course. They were identical in size and shape to the 2 guards that had brought her to her from her cell, from where the standard Dalek casings were decorated with burnished gold and bronze. The 5 members of the Eternity Circle were deep metallic blue, with domed heads of polished silver and matching silver sense globes spotting their lower halves. All Jocelyn knew was that they'd been charged by the Dalek Emperor with fashioning new weapons to deploy against the Time Lords, some of which they had been testing on the people of Moldox and the other worlds in the Tantalus Spiral. She knew this because he'd had to file the reports. To Jocelyn, they were nightmare creatures, demons encased in blue shells. These were the monsters responsible for what had happened to her beloved planet, her home, and her children. "Wait!" barked one of the Dalek guards. Its voice was like nails being driven into her skull. She stopped walking. She was standing in the centre of the chamber, looking up at the 5 blue Daleks. They seemed to regard her with menace, but none of them spoke. The guards retreated, sliding back soundlessly into two recesses by the door. She decided to remain silent until she was prompted to speak. High above her, a holographic screen flickered to life, tinting a patch of the air a bright, hazy blue. Its appearance was accompanied by a smell that reminded her of fresh ozone. "Report!" boomed the low, grating voice of the Dalek Emperor. Jocelyn glanced up in surprise. The ominous image of its massive, unblinking eye was projected on the screen, but the voice seemed to emanate from all around her, filling the chamber. She sensed a brass rumble in her guts, in her gut, and felt her hackles rise. "The weapons approaches completion," said the Dalek on the far left pedestal, drawing out the words in a rasping monotone. "Soon the Eradicator will be ready." Excellent, replied the Emperor. We stand on the eve of Gallifrey's destruction. A pause. What of the progenitors? 12 of the 17 epochs identified have now been seeded with Dalek progenitors, replied another of the Eternity Circle. The Time Lord forces are spread thin. The war is fought on multiple fronts. As it was prescribed, said the Emperor. What progress has been made on development of the new paradigm? Testing on the planet Moldox is almost complete, replied the Dalek on the central pedestal. Its radiation valves are flashing as it spoke. Data suggests the new temporal weapon paradigm is almost ready for distribution through the time-space continuum. Show me, purred the Emperor. I obey, replied the Dalek. Its head swiveled in Jocelyn's direction. Jocelyn Harris, you have served the Daleks well, it said. I've tried, she stammered, unsure precisely where this was going. Your betrayal of your own kind shows only that you cannot be trusted, continued the Dalek. You will be exterminated. No! She screamed. No! I'll do anything. Tell me what I have to do to prove myself to you. She started backing away towards the door, but she knew there was nowhere to run. She was on a Dalek command station, orbiting the vast space anomaly. Any reprieve would be temporary. It wouldn't stop her trying, though. She turned around, intending to bolt for the door, but cried out in frustration at the sight of a Dalek silhouette in the doorway, blocking her path. As she watched, trying frantically to figure out what to do, the new Dalek glided slowly into view. It was different from the others, the same bronze and gold patterning, the same height and general appearance, but the midsection had been replaced, so that instead of the usual arm and gun stick, there was an enormous black cannon mounted on a ball socket. She backed away, lurching in the low gravity. The Dalek edged towards her, levelling its cannon. Eradicate! Eradicate! Wisps of ruby-coloured energy began to gather around the nozzle of its weapon. No! Please! Screamed Jocelyn, raising her hands to cover her face as the cannon spat a stream of light at her. The last thing she saw was the eye of the Dalek Emperor, glaring down at her from the screen above, with maleficent intent. That is new Dalek weapon, which they have been using to eradicate people from history, as if they'd never been born at all, using radiation from the Tantalus Eye. Now, I will do part 2 next. I'll do a few more chapters on part 2 next. And, well, for the moment, just please leave me some feedback and leave a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Okay. Goodbye.